as far as engaging the warrior spirit, I define the warrior spirit as that spirit that enables you to confidently, courageously, and honorably engage the opportunities and challenges that you face in life. And that includes all of it.
Audacious Living Podcast, where we inspire and empower you to live your most audacious life ever. It's a joy to have you here, taking time out of your day, and I appreciate you joining us on our journey of growth and empowerment. Just like a warrior who faces challenges head on with courage and determination, we too can tackle life's obstacles and seize opportunities with audacity and fortitude. In today's episode, we delve into the essence of living a warrior's life in the modern world and how we can all embody that warrior spirit within us. Our guest today is Jayson Downing. He's a U.S. Marine captain turned author, and he exemplifies the warrior spirit through his military service and his mission to empower others to embrace their purpose and live courageously. Jayson's insights and experiences shed light on the importance of service, truth, strength, and fortitude in navigating life's challenges and embracing audacious living. It's a great interview that I'm certain you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Jayson. Hey, Jayson, thank you for joining me today here on the Audacious Living Podcast. Thanks for making the time like this, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Very cool. Well, on this podcast, we spend so much time in encouraging individuals to live their bold, courageous, audacious lives, and that's going to be different for everyone and what they do and what they bring to the world. But certainly, right. Everyone has inside of them. Everyone has that. I'm gonna take a word from you, that warrior spirit there, and it's just a matter of going off and doing what we're meant to do. You've done just exactly that, my friend. I mean, you're a U.S. Marine captain, a vet. Now you're an author, amongst the whole other things that you've done as well. And so, maybe as a starting point, we can get you just to describe a little bit about your background, the work that you're doing, including your new book.
Sure. Yeah. So a bit about my background. I am a U.S. Marine, as you already mentioned. I joined the Marine Corps in 2009. That was right after I got out of my undergraduate degree. So that was the time when, as we may remember, the Iraq War was still kind of a big thing going on, but it was kind of fizzling down, and Afghanistan was picking up again. And so that was really the conflict that I ended up taking place in after about 2 years of training, very intense training in the fields all over the East Coast, mostly in Quantico, Virginia. Was able to go out, spent 12 months in Afghanistan. What I was trying to do out there, what our goal was to reduce our footprint in the area, which means, was the troop drawdown at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to reduce our footprint, trying to transfer the responsibility for security over to the Afghan security forces, which we had been training for several years, and then to facilitate that transfer and maintain the security that had been established in the area, while at the same time, we were doing a lot less of it, they were doing a lot more. So that was the goal while we were there. And at least, I know that hindsight, now we're all looking back, we kind of know how Afghanistan ended up, and that's a whole nother matter. But at least while we were there, it was a successful transfer of security while my unit was there. So we felt pretty good about that when we were leaving. After that, I spent a second deployment as a scout sniper platoon commander that involved putting together the team, putting together a screener, recruiting all the individuals, basically building the platoon from nuts to bolts all the way up to a unit that was ready to deploy within a 6-month time frame. And then we did a deployment out to, it wasn't a combat deployment, it was actually what we call a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Force, mm-hmm. To Japan, Australia, and China. So we did a lot of training with the Australian military forces, and so basically kind of a force in readiness at the time. So that's my military history. coming out of those two deployments, I knew that I had pretty much accomplished most of what I wanted to do in the military.
Mhm.
I've been able to be a platoon commander. I've been able to build my own team, been able to train them, been able to speak into some younger Marines' lives, which was very rewarding.
Nice.
And so I just decided to transfer out of the military and pursue the next mission stage of my life, which involved, schooling. And I've since gotten into business and finance and business consulting. But you also mentioned the book. That was one of the most recent missions, I would say, that I engaged. That whole process.
It seems like life is a daily mission for you.
Oh, but you know what? I maybe it's just me. I prefer to think of it that way, actually.
I love it.
It helps get me out of bed in the morning. If I have a mission, if I have a purpose,
Makes
which
sense. Makes sense.
I didn't always actually. Coming out of the military, it was quite a hard transition for me. A lot harder than I thought it was, because that identity and that sense of purpose, it had been
Sure.
there one day and it was gone the next.
You know something, that is a very real thing. I want to talk about that because I think for a lot of people they lose sight of the fact that, let's take a step back. You work, you work your whole life, you
Mhm.
train, like even in the sense of the military, 2 years in Quantico, you said, right? Training
Right.
2 years for something that and you're this is a full life dedication kind of thing that you're doing, right?
Right.
And you're
Right.
training for this, and you're training for it, and then it arrives, right? You do what you got to do. The mission's over. Then it's like, not now what? Like, it's a really big deal to not
Yeah.
have that sense of purpose. Certainly our sometimes our values tied in that. We do that sometimes. We tie
Yeah.
everything about us until this thing, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, this thing is not there. So that's a big deal.
It's it's like a vacuum, and you're just trying to figure out where to fill that vacuum. And there's lots of things that society promises that'll fill that particular vacuum, that void of purposelessness.
Mm,
Not all of them are very positive.
got you, got you. No, no, you're right, you're right. So now coming out of that, to
Mhm.
refine your purpose, that's a really big deal.
You know what? It has. It's been a huge deal, and it was quite a journey for me. And part of it was figuring out how I could take the lessons and the skills and everything that had been poured into me,
Yes.
from the great military leaders, the warriors that I was able to work alongside of every single day, and being able to figure out how I could then continue to transfer those lessons and convey those lessons to somebody else, to the people around me. And
Right.
one of the many things I've done since the military, I've kind of hopped around a little bit, is I've also worked as a part-time college professor at a couple different
Okay.
universities. And let me tell you, the younger generation, 20, between 18, 22 years old,
Yeah.
um, especially during COVID, that time hit them hard. It really hit them hard. It led a lot of people really confused, depressed, anxious, all the feelings that we were all having. But I think it was kind of even more so at that age because, you know, what do any of us know at that age, right? We're all kind
Sure.
of lost in
Sure.
the sauce at that point.
Sure. Sure.
So
Hey,
that's
listen, sometimes you get a bit older and you still don't know nothing, right? So
but yeah, but hopefully you have a little bit of wisdom behind you, a little bit of life experience.
sure.
Not
Sure.
always, but mostly. So that's actually what spawned the book idea. It's that it was during COVID and we were all locked in our houses and all trying to figure out what was up and down and sideways. And in the middle of all of that turmoil, I thought, there's got to be something I can do to try to help, be part of the problem be part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. And
Right.
how can I help to convey some of the message and some of the leadership skills and some of the encouragement that was instilled in me, so freely given to me, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do in the book, trying to say, hey, this is this is how you live the warrior's life. This is how Marines think about living the warrior's life. Now, it doesn't mean you need to be a Marine. I say in the book, not everybody's cut out to be a soldier. Not everybody's cut out to be a Marine or an airman. Not everybody's cut out to storm a beach. But every single person can be a warrior in their family, in their community, and in their nation, in whatever aspect that suits them. Right? Being a warrior as far as engaging the warrior spirit, I define the warrior spirit as that spirit that enables you to confidently, courageously, and honorably engage the opportunities and challenges that you face in life. And that includes all of us.
I love that. Confidently, creatively, and
Courageously,
consciously, courageously,
and
confidently, courageously, and the last one was
honorably. Honorably.
honorably. Those are big. All three are big, because a lot. I mean, it just it signifies what warrior spirit stands for, right?
Yeah. Right.
And that's huge. And I'm glad you defined that, because I was actually going to ask you to define the spirit for me. So I'm glad you went ahead and did that. And I'm also glad that you sort of pointed out the different areas that we can demonstrate this spirit, right? Again, it's not,
Right.
doesn't have to be storming anywhere or kicking down doors, not like that. But
Right.
certainly, you can that mentality, if you will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That fierceness,
Hmm.
those things we can demonstrate in life regardless of what we're doing. So I'm really glad that you made that distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe that. And, some of the most amazing warriors I've known obviously have been in the warrior profession because, that was part of my background, but I've also known some spectacular warriors outside of the warrior profession as well. And, some people I know in everyday life, the battles that they're fighting and the way that they're making their communities better and the lives of people around them better. I mean, they're fighting the good fight. They're just doing it in a different battlefield than the one that I chose, that I was trained for. And so that's part of the adjustment actually that veterans make when they come out of training. It's like, well, here's a new battlefield. How do I apply these concepts to this new
Sure.
battlefield?
Tell me, Jayson, why it's so important to pursue a life of courageous service.
Pursuing a life of courageous service is, I mean, I think that that's the key of what makes life meaningful, really. And we've been fed this endless diet of rights. We always talk about our rights, and it's far more common amongst the younger population now, and the older as well. But particularly, I think the younger generation to hear things like what they can be given or what they're owed
Okay.
rather than what they can provide and give to back to their society. And it's really empty and meaningless at the end of it. It only results, I think, in a sense of entitlement and narcissism, which is ultimately very shallow. And we're all going to face challenges in life. We're all going to have the storms of life come
Sure.
through. You don't have to live that long until you figure that out. And if you don't have something deep anchoring you, then you're just going to get blown all over the place, man. It's just going to happen. And so then the question becomes, well, what's deep? What anchors you? And I think that is a very real answer. It's, well, what are you providing for the people around you rather than just yourself? Tell me one thing you've done in your entire life for somebody else. We hear everybody around us, in on social media and in the news demanding respect because of, I'm a person, I need respect. It's like, okay, tell me one thing you've done for anybody other than you your entire life. Tell me something that is respectable about you, and then we'll talk, all right? Because that's the way it is in the military. You don't demand respect, you earn it. That's the way it is. That's the way respect works.
Right.
I think that we've confused in our society two different words. Is we say, respect everybody, and what we really mean by that is show everybody a sense of common courtesy, a sense of decency, right? Respect their humanity. Obviously, don't look down on them. Realize that they have equal value to you in an intrinsic manner. So we almost don't have the right word because that's not really respect. If you respect everybody, then respect is worthless
Sure.
in a sense, right? If I say I respect you as a human, but I respect everybody, it's like, well, now it's become meaningless. So I think that we need to really differentiate between the two. And for me, that and in the warrior life, that's how respect is earned. It's living a life of service. That's what separates you.
Yeah, it just seems when we talk about respect, it just seems that, and I think you use the word entitlement, the sense of entitlement. It's very
Mhm.
strong, and I should automatically get it just because, and not that they're the courtesy and kindness and being generous,
Mhm.
those things can't exist. But it gets to a point where, and we're seeing this now, where there's a clashes where like
Mhm.
it's more important I get respect than you give me respect, right? And it's we're not seeing each other on the same
Right,
playing field any longer, right? It's like
right,
I should get mine because you got to respect my. Well, if me giving you respect means I lose mine, then who's winning, right?
right,
Both.
right,
I don't think anyone wins in that situation. So
right.
um, we're seeing a lot of that. I point to social media as a fault. I mean, I say that, but I'm an active participant in social media as well, so I see the value in it. But at the same time, I see where it's breaking us apart, if you will. And so I agree with you on that topic wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's a particular minefield that it's really hard to know how to navigate it, that isn't it? And there's no doubt
Minefield. That was that. Is that a pun there? You said minefield. Is that
in
like a military pun?
no pun intended, although sure.
Sorry, go ahead. I pick a pun.
No, I mean it's no doubt in my mind that a lot of people in our society nowadays are being completely deranged because of social media, and it tends to it just feeds you the worst possible news because that's what's going to get attention.
Sure,
And I did a little experiment a while back. This was on LinkedIn of all places. LinkedIn was supposed to be the professional place, right? The place where
okay,
it was just, it wasn't Twitter, right? We could say that it was a
gotcha.
little bit more, it was a little
Oh
bit more
boy.
professional, right?
Oh boy,
And
and I'm a fan of LinkedIn. Oh boy, I'm not sure I'm ready for this one, but go ahead.
so, people, like to, post all their opinions of the day. And
Sure,
I've tried like, responding to a couple, and a couple I responded rather very blithely, sarcastically, with like a one word pithy, or one sentence pithy response, right?
sure.
As we sometimes do, when we're not our best versions of ourselves. And then others, I'm like, no, Jayson, take it down a notch. All right, I wrote out a very long, very reasonable, like, here's kind of my thoughts on this. It's very well thought out. Guess which one got more likes and clicks, right?
That's right. Yeah, I hear
There's
you.
the old phrase, like, nobody's ever said on social media, oh, you're right, I changed my mind, right?
That's right. Never happens. You know what?
So,
I've been wrong my whole life. Thank you.
yeah,
This comment changed my whole perspective on life. Thank you for opening my eyes. I don't.
well, that's why I
I,
like doing stuff like this, because you're whether you're on Twitter or Instagram, if there's a character limit, or even if it's not, I think it's now been removed on Twitter. But to any extent, like, there's no substitute for just a good long form conversation, right? You
sure,
can actually
sure.
talk to people, you can see them, you can listen to them, you can hear their intonation in their voice, you can ask questions. Um, the conversations, if you want to call it that, on social media are always so disjointed.
Yes,
And it's, I may respond to somebody, but they're not going to respond back to me, probably, right? It's everybody else is going to respond, and then the conversation keeps going.
right,
So you're trying to have a conversation
right.
with people you don't know, who many of them are anonymous, and they're people around the world. You're probably arguing with like a 15-year-old in one location, a 95-year-old somewhere else, and like there's no way to have any sort of coherence to it. So, like, for me, I keep social media out of my day in the morning, because I stay completely off of it. I need to fill my head with something positive in the
Sure,
morning to set the tones for the day. And then I'm very selective, with the quality of people that I follow, and the
certainly.
information that I allow in. I think everybody
Certainly.
has a right to say whatever they want, but that doesn't mean I need to listen to it and ingest it every single day. But that's just going to drive me insane. It's a matter of mental hygiene for me. I need to
Sure.
keep it clean in order to be able to be the best version of myself, for me, for my family. So,
I've got a friend of mine who does a similar attitude towards social media, but his approach is I'm only going to follow things that make me smile, and so I
mm,
like to look at cats that wear suits or wear people's clothes. So his
right.
accounts he follows are animals and cats that wear people's clothes, and he finds enjoyment in that. And so whatever works for you, rock it. That's what I say.
Kind of a weird flex, but you know what? That's cool. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's very clear that purpose and service are important to you. No question about that.
Yeah.
And the military would
Okay.
have a lot to do with that. The for those that are trying to figure out their purpose, because I would say the two are hand in hand, right? Once you've
Yeah,
identified a purpose, then that naturally gives you an idea of what your service will look like, would it not?
absolutely. So the question is like, how do you find your purpose if you're still kind of
Yeah,
what it is?
yeah.
Piece by piece, it doesn't come to you normally. It doesn't come in some sort of white light experience, so there's two directions I would say you can go with this. One positive,
Yeah,
one comes from a negative place, but it ends up positive. So the first place you
yeah.
look is what interests you, what grabs your attention, what can you what are you doing when time seems to just slip by and go by
Okay.
without, where 2 hours feels like 5 minutes, because chances are this is something that deeply interests you. It speaks to your soul in a new kind of
Hmm.
way. And you normally walk away from that kind of engagement feeling like a better version of yourself rather than a lesser version of yourself,
Hmm. Hmm.
and feeling stronger rather than weaker. So what is it
Right.
about that? This, by the way, this is why I do podcasting, because that's what podcasting does for me. That's what having authentic conversations with real people, with good people, does for me. You
Right.
know, and so that's one thing I would say. And you got to kind of take a step back and watch what you're doing from like an outsider's perspective. And so you're kind of viewing yourself from the outside. So you're like, okay, maybe you keep a log of your weekly activities. You say, what was I doing when I was very interested, and when time seemed to slip by on me, and maybe you learn something about yourself just by watching how you react and what you do, because otherwise you kind of fall into habit, and it'll happen but you won't notice it, right?
Right.
So that's one way. And the other way, which actually is one of the ones that drives me, is figure out what irritates you or what pisses you off.
Okay.
And maybe there's a reason that it pisses you off. Maybe that's your particular problem that you need to solve. Maybe that's your
Ah.
responsibility. And if it's a big problem, if it's if the dragon that you're going to face is particularly large and scary, well, good. If it maybe it'll eat you, and sure, maybe it will eat you. That's a reality. But it's probably eating you up a little bit every single day right now.
Mm.
So it's just slow. It's just a slow death, as opposed to one that could go by quickly. All right. So
Sure.
I'm not telling you not to be afraid of the dragons out there. What I'm saying is that if there's a particular dragon that is bothering you, and our society is full of them, our culture is
Yes.
full of them,
Yes.
then maybe you are destined to take on that particular dragon. And if it's big and scary, well, that just means that maybe that'll be a lifelong mission, which means it has lifelong purpose. And I'll tell you this much: the bigger the dragon, the more gold it holds. It hoards. So
Mm.
those are my two ways that I know. If you want to find purpose, start somewhere. Start either with what interests you or what pisses you off, and start taking baby steps. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to go from 0 to 10 like that.
Right. Right.
That's not how I wrote my book. When I was first started writing my book, and pretty much throughout the entire writing of it, I was absolutely terrified. Um, and it was a slog.
I appreciate
So,
the honesty.
I mean, it's real. Like, you're putting yourself out there whenever you do something like that, right? And I'm an introvert
Yes.
by nature. So it's, so the question is, how do you keep going when something scares you? And I learned this one from one of my mentors. He's one of the top fitness trainers in the nation. Actually, he
Okay.
trains people like Drew Brees and LaDainian Tomlinson in the NFL,
Okay.
um, and Tony Gwynn Jr. So he's one of the top fitness professionals in the nation. And I had a good fortune to be a part of one of his mentorship classes, and he walks you through a visualization exercise. So if you're at a crossroads, imagine you're at a crossroads and you have to make an important decision. right?
Mm-hmm.
One decision really scares you, and then we'll have what's called maybe the easy path, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And you need to sit there, take maybe 15, 20 minutes and do this, and mentally walk yourself down each one of those paths. All right. Imagine yourself going there. Imagine yourself going over through the obstacles, under the brambles, up and
Mm-hmm.
over the stones,
Right.
and arriving at your destination, whatever that destination, like as far out as you can, right? And then imagine that you're at the end and you've received whatever reward that particular path is going to provide for you,
Okay.
and take a look backwards down the path and try actually to feel at that moment what it would feel like to reach the end of that particular path, and then go backwards and then do the other one. All right. And by the time you walk down both paths,
Mm-hmm.
and you look backwards, the path that originally seemed dark and scary might look less so because you've
Right.
actually gone through it.
Yes.
But it's not just that. So it looks less scary, but also the other option begins to look even more scary because, and this is what helped me when I was getting ready to publish the book. I'm like, I'm really scared of what people's reactions might be,
Gotcha.
right? Maybe they'll disagree with it. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll think it was horrible writing, whatever, by the way, the reviews have all been great. So, that didn't materialize. But
Excellent.
at the moment, I didn't know that before the publishing. But
Sure.
then I look
Sure.
at the other path and I say, okay, well, maybe I could just not publish it. Well, then what? Well, then I just have to live with the fact that I'm the type of guy that takes the football to the 90-yard line and doesn't even get tackled. He just stops. He just purposely sits down the football and just sits there. Then
Yeah.
I have to be the
Yeah.
guy that wakes up every morning and looks in the mirror and realizes that I don't finish things that I start.
Mm.
And that seems a lot scarier when you actually think about it. Maybe I'm going to reach the end of my life and there's always going to be that what if in my mind where I just have that tinge of regret.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want that. So when I really started thinking about it, I'm like, okay, that scares me more than actually finishing the book. So it's about having a healthy response, kind of an enlightened view of what you should be afraid of.
Gotcha. It makes total sense. And I certainly I love the analogy, getting a 90-yard line and stopping, and there's no one there to tackle you. It just, because when you have that image, that visual, you think it just seems silly. It's
Right.
ridiculous. Makes no
Right.
sense, right? And so,
Right.
but I think that can be universally applied. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. So I want to go back to the notion of the dragon that we're trying to slay, right?
Mhm.
When you wrote your book, what dragon were you trying to slay?
The book is set against the backdrop of, the subtitle is exploring what it means to be a warrior in the modern West. So I wanted to make this not just a book about what I learned in the military, but also set against the current backdrop of some of the crazy stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Okay.
And particularly this, it's been called like a culture war that everybody kind of says is brewing in the West, where the people are just at each other's throats, and there's a lot of
Right.
division and there's a lot of confusion. So that was the particular dragon I was trying to fight. Is trying to figure out what's going on and then provide people a roadmap through it. As here's my argument: is that as the warrior spirit has declined, particularly in the West, is that a couple really bad ideas have begun to surface, and those are the two kind of camps that are pulling people apart and pulling, or they're driving a lot of the discord currently. And I call one camp the camp of toxic individualism. Now,
Okay.
this is like the camp where people are completely individualists. They are disconnected from any sort of community or social responsibility. They're only concerned about themselves, about what they can get out of things, and are utterly unconcerned with their family, their community, or the broader social responsibility that they exist in. It's one of the first things that's beat out of you, by the way, when you first enter military training. You learn that you're absolutely an individual and you're responsible for yourself, but that's not it, because the lives of everybody else in your unit depend on you being responsible and taking their lives into account and not just
Right.
your own.
Right. Right.
So that's one camp. And then the other camp kind of sits at the polar opposite to that, and I call that one is corrupted tribalism, where we're being encouraged to separate into groups, define ourselves by our group, and to abdicate our personal responsibility to that of the group, our self-sovereignty, and we lose a sense of our individual self and merely define ourselves based upon whatever group characteristics that we tend to identify ourselves by now. Okay. And these ideas kind of had their genesis, I would argue, in the academy and in universities, and kind of seeped out from there. But I just think it's really a regressive way of thinking, to where the theory is that we all exist in a zero-sum battleground of warring groups that are fighting for the wealth, resources, and opportunities in society. It's actually, technically speaking, it's a meta-Marxist narrative, and it seems to have seeped out to where now it's like, I can't speak as myself. I'm now speaking, and I have to do what I call the identity resume, where I'm speaking as a white heterosexual male, and now I'm putting myself in a camp based on my group identity. And so now we're judging people based on their characteristics as opposed to who they are as individuals. And so those are the two groups, and you can see that one embraces a sense of social cohesion, which is important. The other one embraces a sense of individualism, which is also important.
Yep.
So when I'm writing this, I'm thinking, what does the warrior think? Are we individuals or are we members of a group? And the answer is we're both. And you have to acknowledge both. You have to keep both central.
One's not better than the other.
Absolutely.
Right.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
You need them both.
Yes.
So that's the particular dragon I'm fighting, is trying to tease out these really, really bad ideas that seem to have seeped out, and to provide people a way through that. And I do that by talking about the 4 primary warrior virtues that seem to have been most, let's say, problematic. And you already mentioned one, and that's the idea of service. I also talked through the idea of truth, the idea of strength, and its corollary virtue, power, and then the idea of fortitude. Put all of those together, that is, in my mind, that makes up the warrior mentality.
So give that to me again. So we talk about service,
truth,
yeah, strength,
personal strength, yes, and fortitude.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the difference between strength and fortitude?
Personal strength is, the two are closely connected. Fortitude, I would argue, is how you deal with challenges and hardship and suffering when it comes your way. Fortitude, I argue, sits between two different mentalities, and that's the victimhood mentality and the mentality of self-denigration, is what I call it.
Okay.
The victimhood mentality is a mentality that says that everything bad that happens to me is somebody else's fault. Somebody else targeting me, somebody else, some other group, society, whatever. It's somebody else's fault, which, by the way, robs you of any sense of agency and any ability to change whatever has happened to you. Right. So it's actually the most disempowering mentality to have.
Well, you're giving up the power, right? Exactly. You're just like, I can't do nothing about it. I'm stuck.
Right. So the flip side of that, if you're not going to take any responsibility, is to take all the responsibility. And I call this the mentality of self-denigration. And I've seen this a lot, actually, in the veteran community when they come out, particularly those that have been through a lot of traumatic experiences overseas, because the military teaches such a profound sense of responsibility that sometimes people come out and they're unable to say that was war. Yeah, well, that was war, and what happened there wasn't my fault.
Right.
Maybe some of it was my fault, but there's a big difference between all of it and some of it, right? And being able to tease that out. And what happens, and the problem with taking all responsibility on yourself, even though it's probably better than blaming everybody else. The problem with taking too much is that it leads to a mindset of thinking that if you make decisions, they're probably going to be bad ones. So it leads to this hesitancy, right? Where you don't want to make a decision because it's probably going to be bad, because look at all these other bad things that have happened and they were all your fault.
Right.
So one of the things we learn in the military is that sometimes, I don't know, am I allowed to curse on your show?
We're halfway there.
Okay. Well, I'll just say stuff happens. Stuff happens.
Understood.
There are things in life that really just happen because we live in a random and sometimes uncaring universe where terrible things are going to befall you no matter what. And the warrior knows that each one of those categories, sometimes people target you and you truly are a victim. Sometimes stuff happens and it's your fault because you're either insufficient or you made a bad choice. All right. That's the reality.
Yep.
And sometimes stuff just happens. All right. And the problem doesn't lie in acknowledging any of those options. The problem is when you adopt one mode of thinking for everything that happens to you. You either place all responsibility on other people or you take it all on yourself. And I argue that fortitude is the ability to be able to make those distinctions and being able to stand up underneath some of the hardships and the suffering of life and you do that largely by establishing, again, your purpose. And realizing that you have something that is worth living for and is worth getting through the hard times for. And you realize that no matter how hard the hard times are, that you're going to be able to withstand it. And so that circles back around to your question about strength. That's what strength is.
Living with that courageous purpose. We go right back to that purpose thing again. That really is the foundation of it all, Jayson. And I love the way you've sort of wrapped around that and made that, your own purpose moving forward. So certainly want to thank you for that. Congratulations on the first book, that one you thought no one would like, no one would read. Congratulations that you're putting that out in the universe. For listeners who wanted to connect with you or learn more about you, where can we send them?
So I have a website. It's called thewarriorjournal.com. It's where I have several blog posts. There's also a link to the book there. I have an Instagram account, Jayson M. Downing, Jayson spelled with a Y. So it's just so people don't get lost. And then the book can be found on Amazon. So any of those places, they can find me, they can follow me, they can keep up with what's going on.
Amazing. Well, Jayson, I think this is outstanding. Again, I just love the fact that you've taken the collection of experiences and captured them in this fashion, in this manner, whether you're a professor or in the military or anywhere aspect of your life. You captured them all, and I think that's what makes it so powerful. So thank you for doing that. Congratulations for doing that, because that is a big deal, and I don't want to to gloss that over. And again, appreciate you taking the time, man. This is awesome. Thank you.
It was great, and thanks for having me on, and I hope to do it again sometime. So thank you. You have a great day.
Back, we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Jayson for being here. And I gotta say, his insights and thoughts around the importance of pursuing a life of courageous service really, really resonated with me. It's something I've grown up with thanks to my mother, who's taught me about service. And so when he spoke on that, I really connected to that. It reminds us that the true fulfillment comes when serving others and making a positive impact in our communities, whether it's through acts of kindness, mentoring, or simply being there for someone in a time of need. Each of us can cultivate our own warrior spirit by living a life of service. As we reflect on today's insightful conversation, I encourage you to explore Jayson's book, The Warrior's Life, where he shares valuable insights on living with purpose and embracing challenges that life throws our way. We're going to make sure that it's in the show notes. You click on that to access the book. Thank you for tuning into the Audacious Living Podcast. And remember, the warrior spirit definitely lies within each of you, and it's up to us to embrace it. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast.